Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora. Ki te rangatira, tēnā koutou. Ki te whānau o Kahungunu, kia ora. Kia ora tātou. So yes, I am really passionate about our native plants and animals, and I'm humbled and privileged to have spent much of my working life learning how to look after them. But today I stand up here representing a fairly new organisation called Biodiversity Hawkes Bay. Papatuanuku is in trouble, in big trouble. Nearly 1 million, or over actually 1 million, these are the latest figures from the latest reports, over 1 million species are now threatened with extinction. And lots of those reports are all saying the same thing. But one of the new things that have come out of these reports and the various experts is the urgency with which that's being said. It's quite new, and they're saying, enough time for talking, we have to start doing. We have to save those things that we have left, and we have to do that now, not tomorrow. So it's very easy to feel, a bit despondent and think, well, what can I do? What can I do as an individual? And that's where we hope that Biodiversity Hawkes Bay can come into play and act as an umbrella to bring everybody that's working on biodiversity issues in Hawkes Bay together and make it so that individually there are things that we can do, and collectively we can do a whole lot more. So I'll just take you back 10 years or so. So that's how long this mahi's been talked about. And I'd also like to acknowledge that actually there's been a whole lot of mahi go on throughout the place way before that. But this is an initiative from the Regional Council, but they wanted it to be something that came from community, and so they got a whole lot of people together and they talked for about 7 years to put this strategy together. Must have been a lot of talking going on in that time. I wasn't involved in that, but maybe some of you were. But where I got involved was the development of the action plan. And many of the people that got involved in that, there were 17 parties around the table. They were people that had signed up to the Biodiversity Accord, which was like a pledge to support the strategy and help it out. And I see there's a Katarina, she was involved in this for some of the time. There was a planning group that came together and put together this action plan. And so that's what I'm going to talk to you about today, where we're at with this action plan and the things that we're hoping to happen. So those are our top 6 actions, and I've got a few copies of this action plan if anybody wants to have a look at it, or the strategy, just go to this Biodiversity HB website, but I've got a few hard copies here. I'll leave them out in the foyer out there. There were hui and meetings held in 2017, and I hope some of you made it to some of those hui. And there's about in the back of this action plan, I think there's 39 different actions that got sort of developed, and the things that people wanted to see and people thought were the most important things to happen in the next few years to save our biodiversity. And then out of those 39, they got prioritised to the top 6. But once we get through these, there's plenty more to be done, and that mahi of working out exactly what to do has already been done. So this action plan got launched about a year ago, although it was written in November 2017. But so we have been making progress on quite a lot of these things, but most of the progress has been on the first 5 actions. And we know that working with landowners, because many important sites are on private land, is really important, but we also know that we need to have fresh resources, we need money to go and do the actual work. There's no point in going to people and saying, oh, you've got this really awesome bit of bush or this awesome wetland, but it's up to you to do something about it. We know that we need to have more resources to actually get that mahi done. Yep. So I'm just going to take you through some of these actions and where we're at. So the first couple is about making sure that the focus and the energy and the effort goes to the right places at the right time. And so one of the tools that's been used to do that has been ecosystem mapping, and a tool that's been developed called zonation. And basically, the map that's over here on the right, that is looking at the top 30% priority ecosystems left in Hawke's Bay. That's largely been done as a desktop exercise, and so there is a bit of ground truthing to be done on that. But it gives us some idea of how large the job is. So yeah, that still gives us 900 sites that need work, that need some kind of work going on in them. One of the other things to note in those stats that are up there about these top priority sites is that a large percentage of them are small, and that's a real challenge in Hawke's Bay. Because when a site is small, so that might be a small wetland or a small piece of bush that's left, they just become so much more vulnerable to invasion by pests and weeds, and also things like lack of water, drought, or water that may have been extracted from the underground, and also wind. They become much more vulnerable to wind. So a lot of those really small places are actually in quite poor condition, and so that makes the job even harder, but also, more urgent. And I'd just like to say a word on the identified taonga sites. I understand, that's there's discussions going on about that at the moment, and I know that there's been quite a lot of work done on that within various other areas. So. If you've got any questions on that, tō ngaio. Yep. So this action aims to line up programs and plans with the strategy so that everybody's talking apples and comparing apples with apples. And they're hoping to do this through coordinating policies and operational best practice. So we really hope that this will tackle all sorts of things like how do you make a roadside drain actually more biodiverse? How do you make it acceptable for insects and plants to be living in that? As well as the bigger picture things as lining up the district plans with the strategy so that biodiversity is taken into account then as well. Whoops. Yep. So much of our effort over the last year has gone into putting into this enduring infrastructure to make sure that we can support biodiversity for the long term. And so collectively we're known as Biodiversity Hawkes Bay, but we have two legal entities. One is a Biodiversity Foundation, and that focus is very much about money, getting money in. And the other one is called the Biodiversity Guardians of Hawke's Bay, and that's very much focused on people, bringing the people with us. It's got to become a normal thing that people consider biodiversity, and just like maybe 10 years ago, many of us didn't really consider recycling, but that's become much more of a norm that people actually think about that, and so that's one of our targets. So the Biodiversity Guardians is run by a voluntary management committee, of which I'm chair, and Ngaio Tioka is one of our management committee. The mahi is to protect the vision, to guard the vision of the strategy, to make sure that it stays on track and that progress is being made and it doesn't get sidelined by political moves or anything. And membership, so it's very much a membership, and at the moment we've got 120 individuals, members, but we'd like to see that into the thousands. We'd like it that people come on board and come with us. So becoming a member supports the strategy and the action plan. Means you become an automatic signatory to the Biodiversity Accord. Gives you access to our forum events and the right to nominate and vote for a foundation trustee. And your membership contribution also will go towards actually funding projects, which I'll show you about in a minute. I think I'm on to the next one. Yep. So I'd just like to acknowledge that we have got a few small business and corporate guardians on board so far, and again, this is something that we've only been going for a year, so it's something that we're wanting to grow. But I'd just like to acknowledge all those that have come on board so far. So one of the other main tasks of the Guardians is to hold forum wānanga to educate, inspire, allow people to network. And over the last year, we've held 4 events. And we've also been trying to grow, our presence within the biodiversity space at conferences and workshops, and also using social media. Oh, yep, no, that's right. So the Biodiversity Foundation, as I said, it's all about the money, and as such, it's a charitable trust, and it's run by a board of trustees. And just apologies from Charles Doherty, who's the chair, and also Des Ratima, who many of you will know, is our deputy chair, who neither of them could be here today. And I guess one other point I'd like to make is that that's pretty white up there. We'd love to see more brown people coming on board. This is all focused about the money, and obviously the endowment fund is a big one. That's the thing that will enable real change, to get that money in. We've got a couple of side sort of funding things as well, and the idea behind the partnerships is that partner with people to find resources for projects, and then Biodiversity Hawkes Bay will administer that funding and just add a level of security. And it also means that not everybody has to be a legal entity to go and apply for money to different things. They can do it through Biodiversity Hawkes Bay, because many of the funding bodies these days, you have to be a legal entity, and that's a bit of a barrier for a lot of people. So that's the partnership side of it. The project fund. Oh, it's come back. That's good. The project fund. So we're very proud to announce that just within a year, we've got enough funds to actually contribute to these 4 projects. These are our first 4 projects. There's one within each district. And that's come from membership fees, but also funding that's come from DOC, who have put money specifically into this fund. And there are a lot of community funds out there already, but there's this real gap where there's no funding for actual web biodiversity enhancement is the top criteria. So that's what this fund will aim to do. So the Foundation, one of the things that they've been doing over the last year is really just building their brand and trying to partner up with businesses, and they've partnered up with Great Things Grow Here, which has been great, because they've got these 300 brand champions already that can help us get the brand out there. They've also developed some sponsorship categories and some sponsorship sort of packages, and Mammoth Print and Water Testing Hawkes Bay have come on in what's called a bronze sponsorship, and that's providing services and resources to Biodiversity Hawkes Bay and specific projects. The high-level targets for this year for biodiversity for the foundation is to grow the endowment fund, and also form more tangible, mutually beneficial partnerships. And so that's one of the things I wanted to mention today, because what could that look like between iwi and Biodiversity Hawkes Bay? Well, that's a completely blank canvas at the moment, and But, it may be developing projects together, it may be sharing expertise, it may be whatever, but that's something for our rangatira to talk about. So one of the big sponsorships that's come on board is the airport, and they've put in to the tune of 450,000 over the next 3 years, and that includes contributions to the endowment fund, but also contributions to specific projects around the Ahiriri wetlands, which, as you can see, completely dwarf the actual airport. So that's pretty cool. So the rest of my talk is just to give you a little bit of an example about when we talk about biodiversity restoration, what does that mean? And I wanted to use Tautane, which for those of you who haven't been there, that's the big headland, the Cape Turnagain, and the area that's over on the right-hand side that's quite dark, that's actually at the 60 hectares of QE2 Covenant. So that's from up on top, looking back down. What that doesn't show is there's at the end of the Cape there's a beautiful big reef, and it's quite good power diving there, eh, Hayden? Wherever he is. So there's many things that have developed in this. This is quite a harsh climate, but one of the things that's really cool about it is that we've got these coastal cliffs with vegetation on that. Then we've got back dunes, and then fore dunes, and then down to the shore. Now, most places in New Zealand, those back dunes have been levelled on out, and we've built on them. And so, this is actually quite unique. There's not many places left in New Zealand where these back dunes are still intact like that. And because of that, there's a whole lot of plants and animals that are living in there that we sort of aren't, that are gone from a whole lot of other places. So this is one of them. This is a pinatoro. And when we were looking at the harakeke there, that's actually quite unique to the area. It's a hybrid between a coastal flax and a swamp flax, its own hybrid. There's also this very special little moth, which is critically endangered, believe it or not. It spends its whole life living on this one plant, this one type of plant, which is also another type of pinatoro. But that plant likes to live in these very, very steep, the steepest and most eroded parts of the Papa Cliffs. And that's one of the populations. There's only 3 populations of this plant at the site there, and the other 2 are sort of further north and on steeper and more erodible land. So they're very, very vulnerable to any heavy rain events, and as we heard just previously, those are becoming more frequent and heavier. And so that's a real problem for that plant. I'll just give you a quick look at the moth again. It's a day-flying moth, which is quite unusual and very bright. And its larvae comes out at night and eats the plant. But being nocturnal means that it's also very vulnerable to predation from all the introduced mammals, which also come out at night. And of course, in this area, because it's the sea, there's also a whole lot of seabirds there, birds that specialise to the area, and all those birds there that have shown are all in the threatened category. And the tarapuka down the bottom there, the black-billed gull, that's actually critically endangered now. That's the highest category of threat. I mean, who would ever have thought that the gull would get to that? But that's from predation, mainly. So yeah, there's all these really cool, native plants and animals living there, but there's also the threats from introduced plants and animals. And the very first thing that's happened in this area is a whole lot of pampas control. So in that picture, you can see the things with the white plumes are pampas, and the things with the plants with the golden plumes are toitoi. And the pampas outgrows the toitoi and displaces all the other native plants. So that program's been going on for about 8 years now, and we're really getting on top of it. But thousands and thousands of pampas plants we've controlled. So with funding from lotteries last year, and this is a joint project between Lotteries Ngāti Kahungunu, Horizons Regional Council and the Conservation Company, a whole lot of traps have been put in, and there were heaps of possums there. It had never been done, those coastal cliffs. They'd done all around it, but the cliffs themselves, yeah, we got hundreds of possums out of there. Yep. So we've got a whole lot of stoat and cat traps all right around the whole place as well. And as in most of our landscapes, feral cats are actually our number one. Yep, nasties. There's also been a whole lot of goats there, and that's been part of the program too. And just a couple of months ago, they did a big aerial shoot and shot 122. And we'd only ever seen these little groups of like 30 or something. So yeah, that was pretty amazing. One other thing that's happening is this is the Pinotoro, and because this is where in a place where it's been really eroded, and we actually have lost quite a few of those plants this year. So we're taking cuttings of those, growing them on, and we're hoping to be able to establish some new populations in areas where they're not quite so vulnerable. So yeah, that's just a few of the things that are happening down at Tautane. Kia ora tātou.